Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's Alexander Hilly123 here, and it's time for a new video. And as you can see from the title, for the first time in just over 3 years on the channel, if you can believe it, it is a vinyl pickups video today. That is correct, a vinyl pickups video indeed. The exact same concept. If this is your first time watching a vinyl pickups video on the channel, it's the exact same concept of the video game pickups. 5 things to showcase. Of course, with the video game ones, they can be digital, but these are obviously physical vinyl pickups. We don't look too closely at the inlays and the actual disc itself. Sometimes I do. I mean, one of these is actually still in its wrapper, if you will, because I've not taken it out yet. I kind of don't want to. But yeah, it's the first time in over 3 years that I've done one of these. I think I've mentioned a few times, I did say in a couple of videos prior, a few different videos, that I was going to make this video, but you know, the prices of vinyl have essentially doubled, and some of the ones that I really want, you're talking 3 figures. It's an expensive hobby to have, and ultimately this is just for collector's purposes sometimes for me. Depends what the actual album it is. But yeah, happy to do this. Don't expect one for a while. Hopefully be less than 3 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a year and a half. Who knows? Who cares? I'm just happy to have, finally brought a vinyl pickups video back to the channel. It's really cool to be able to do this. I've changed the location as well. We've got a dim light. I've got the old lumberjack on kind of thing going on, and yeah, setting the tone, setting the vibe. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we've got 2 singer-songwriter albums, one from the 1960s, one from the 1970s, an electronic album, and 2 from the world of kind of gothic doom metal as well. 2 bands who hold the origins within those genres, but to be honest with you, by that point, the more rock than metal doesn't really matter. I'm not a purist of those kind of music genres. I just think the 2 of my favourite bands ever. Quite similar, but also very different. Kind of in a way, I'm going to start speaking about them in a minute, but kind of in a way, how all the grunge bands in the early 90s, for me, I could differentiate them all. I enjoyed them all. And all the criticism about one band copying from another, for example, I never bought it. I never gave a shit, because they were all great in their own right. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a beautiful vinyl. By the way, in the drop-down box, if you want to skip ahead and find out when I start talking about each respective album, it's in the drop-down box. There'll be a timestamp to when I start talking about. If you want to, for example, if you want to find out the last album I'm talking about out of the 5 today, click on the timestamp and go from there. I will also, from now on, be linking my favourite song from each album, and also I'm going to share... Well, I'm actually going to update, Jesus, not done a video in a while like this, update every video that I've ever done on the vinyl pickups all the way back to 2017, just to update my favourite song on each album, because I've not done that before, and I'm thinking I probably should have. But anyway, let's start talking about the music. It'll all flow a lot easier then. This, ladies and gentlemen, look at this beautiful artwork. My lord, this is one of the most beautiful in the collection so far. It is none other than Paradise Lost, Draconian Times, the 25th anniversary edition. This album was originally released in 1995, and obviously this is the 25th anniversary edition, which would have been released in 2020. I got this about, I think it was like maybe last summer, I want to say. Can't remember the price of it exactly. Let's just open it up, and trust me, it only gets more beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous artwork and an absolutely astonishing album. If this is your first time watching one of these vinyl pickups videos, ladies and gentlemen, we know, go to Wikipedia. Draconian Times is the 5th studio album by British heavy metal band Paradise Lost. 2 tracks from the album, The Last Time and Forever Failure, were released as singles with music videos, and both of them charted. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, this was released June 95. Running in at 49 minutes on the label Music for Nations, and also one called Relativity. And here it says the genres are gothic metal, gothic rock, and heavy metal. And the album received great praise on release and is seen as indeed one of the best. The albums before this were a more gritty and kind of lo-fi, if metal can be lo-fi production, kind of bare bones production is what I'm trying to say here. And this album sees, and even the album before this called Icon, which is a fantastic album as well, saw Paradise Lost kind of diversifying the music but getting a little more accessible whilst not relinquishing any of the power at the same time. This is Mr. Nick Holmes on vocals. Many people say his clean vocals sound like James Hetfield from Metallica, and they kind of are similar. I don't have a problem with that because I love classic Metallica, and his growled vocals are fantastic as well. I'm not somebody who's overly keen on tons of screams, growled, screeched vocals. I much prefer clean vocals. The bands that I like in any genre of metal that have extreme vocals, I can probably count on both hands. We're talking about 7 or 8 different bands, Gojira, Agalok, Alcest, maybe, stuff like that comes to mind, and a few others, but not loads. At the Gates, maybe. I love At the Gates, old stuff, amazing. But Lost Paradise, the first Paradise Lost album, I've never been able to get into, but from Gothic and up to this album, Shades of God, amazing. And I've got to say, Paradise Lost, man, this is 1995, but they went into a kind of Depeche Mode electronic influence in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I really do love Depeche Mode, but I've never fully been able to get into that. But there are some people who think that is some of the band's best material. But yeah, they completely changed the music into that style, and then went into a normal kind of gothic rock style in the mid-2000s, started making heavy music. They've come full circle. The 2017 album Medusa is full doom metal, really. And the differences between gothic and doom I can't really get into in this video. I haven't got the time, but brooding, dark, somber, full of melody and emotion. The guitar player for Paradise Lost, a guy called Gregor McIntosh, one of the best to ever do it, in my opinion. One of the most underrated of all time. Amazing guitar tones, great vocals. If you don't like the kind of music that I'm, gothic, doom metal, and growled vocals, I would say start maybe with this album or Icon. But yeah, there's something for a lot of different metal fans here. The Plague Within, released in 2015, is a fantastic album. The albums Faith Divides Us, Death Unites Us, and Tragic Idol kind of see the band, in my opinion, in between, where it's kind of influenced by normal heavy metal bands and bands as well, like Mastodon, maybe, with a harder, sludgier sound, with the gothic sound as well. It's badass, but it's moving. There's a lot of melody. It's heavy as shit. Paradise Lost, one of my favourite metal bands ever. And the song that I am choosing to put in below the video as my favourite, ladies and gentlemen, I am gonna go with one, maybe, Forever Failure, which features a sample of Charles Manson, the known lunatic. And sometimes I don't like that when bands put a soundbite of a person in the song, and especially someone like Manson, who was just a deranged maniac, really. People that have, he's got followers and people worshipping him and everything. The guy was an idiot, and a killer, obviously. A disgusting, vile human being. But there we have it. Paradise Lost, Draconian Times, incredible album. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to keep this under 30 minutes in length because I looked back at my prior vinyl pickups and they're all under 30 minutes in length, so that's my test today. So my apologies, I could talk about these for an hour individually, I really could. But it is my oldest vinyl in the collection. I've got some kind of compilation of Beatles albums, which were my mum's, but this is indeed my oldest now. It is, because this is a proper album, not a collection. It is Jackson C. Frank, and this is self-titled, released in 1965, and I thought it was in the corner of this album. I could have sworn it was. Well, it's not. Maybe it was on the sleeve before I ripped it off. Oh, there it is. I knew it was somewhere. Can you see it there? Where is it? I don't even know where it is. Why Why is this so hard? There you go. Mr. Paul Simon. That is indeed Paul Simon. Simon and Garfunkel producing this bad boy. And Jackson C. Frank is one of those artists. People who know of him know how amazing he was and won't say that he was underrated. But if you've never heard of him and you like singer-songwriter, then for me he's underrated. This is his one and only album. If you check his Wikipedia page, a lot of crazy bad shit happened to this man, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of bad luck. And he had a lot of issues, both physically and mentally, which stopped him making more music. If you've been watching my vinyl pickups videos in the past, you know what kind of music I deviate towards. Dark, brooding, sombre, depressing music, the masses would say. This is full of emotion. It is dark. Just one man and the guitar. Minimal production here. But it sounds so big as well. An absolutely loud, booming voice. And you might think, oh, what, like Bob Dylan? Well, he had a loud, booming voice. But no, Jackson had a very unique voice that was not anything like Dylan. I don't really know who to compare him to. Great vocalist, interesting lyricist on some of these tracks. Some are very simplistic. Some good finger picking, pretty good guitar player. I'm not going to make a video, for example, saying who's my favourite guitar players of all time. I say, well, this guy didn't play his instruments quite right. I have no idea about instrumentation musically. I've never played an instrument in my life. I've got these things though, they're called ears, and I use them, and I know this is an amazing album. So let's have a look here. This was released July 1965, ladies and gentlemen, a year before England won the Football World Cup. Genre, it's a folk album, singer-songwriter, running in at 32 minutes in length. This is shorter than Nick Drake's Pink Moon. There is going to be a Nick Drake video coming later in the year, ladies and gentlemen, as we commemorate, I should say, 50 years since the great man's passing. I'll be ranking his albums worst to best, even though we only had 3. This is on the Columbia EMI Castle Music label, it says, and of course, as I said, produced by Mr. Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel. I can't remember how Paul Simon knew of Jackson C. Frank. But basically, just like Nick Drake, on release, the album failed to chart and sold poorly. Frank attempted to track down Simon, who he believed owned the rights to his songs. He went into seclusion and died decades later. But there's a lot more information, I think, to be honest with you, for whatever reason. Oh, right, I'm on the albums page. If you look at the Jackson C. Frank album page, there's not that much information about him, but if you go on his own Wikipedia page, a lot of information there. It says here Frank was reportedly so nervous that in order to play and sing, he had to have screens around him so no one could see him. These stories, ladies and gentlemen, they give me goosebumps, and they're absolutely incredible. Also here it says, I Want to Be Alone, also known as Dialogue, appeared on the soundtrack for the film Daft Punk's Electroma. Quite incredible. Now there are 10 tracks on this album altogether. My favourite, the one I'm going to put in the drop down box, but I adhere you, if you've never heard this album and you like the sound of it, you've got to give it a listen. Please do. It is on Spotify, of course, and other similar platforms, I do believe. It's hard. I'm going to go for Here Comes the Blues because he's wailing in that song. Proper going for it, and as the name suggests, there is a bit of a blues influence here, particularly on that song, particularly on others. Some songs, there aren't really much of a blues influence at all, but it's Jackson C. Frank. One album, I had to get it. Back when I started my collection in 2017, this wasn't available on vinyl, so I think it was a reissue. And on the back, there's a lot of dialogue here, a lot of text. This is Jackson talking, and I've got to say, away with the furries, very peculiar man. I mean that in a nice way, I guess. But I don't have a clue what he's talking about here. I won't call it highbrow, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to figure out what he's talking about. Way over my head. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time in the collection so far that I have a duplicate. I don't mean the same particular vinyl, the same particular album. I mean the first time, we're nearly 50 vinyls strong now in the collection, the first time I've had the same artist on a different album. Because I had that rule, and I've decided, well, screw it, I'm going to break the rule, because sooner rather than later, I'm going to have to get one of my favourites again. And indeed, I have. This is my favourite band of all time. It's Katatonia, and the album Discouraged Ones, which was released in 1998. And this is their third studio album, their first with exclusively clean vocals. And I've not done one of these videos in a while. You might have noticed that I've been stumbling upon my words a little bit. Been a little bit of a messy video. I kind of thought a bit to myself, maybe I should start this once again. But as soon as I hold this album in my hands, the words just flow so easily, because this is an amazing album. And like I said before, yes, I could indeed talk about this one for not just an hour, but hours, ladies and gentlemen. Like I say, Katatonia, my favourite band of all time, and this I got into in the summer of 2010. This isn't exactly summertime music. Probably about a year and a half after a heck of a lot of the other Katatonia albums. Can't exactly remember why I got into it after the others, but I think it is because this isn't seen as one of their best, but I'm telling you now, it is. Would I say, and what I said to you guys, if you've never listened to Katatonia before, get into this album? No, because there is a slightly monotonous tone and vibe to the album. It's hypnotic. A lot of the songs sound the same. The drums, played by the lead vocalist, Jonas Rensk. The plodding and slow, and the guitars are heavy, but it isn't a fast metal album. It's a shoegazy, gothic rock album influenced by bands like Slow Dive, influenced by classic 80s goth bands, influenced by stuff like The Cure, but it turns the depression up to 11. This is one of the most harrowing, beautiful dark listens ever. I find it so incredibly comforting, and you know, it's so cliche. This album has helped me out in dark times, etc. Here it is. Look at that motherfucking angel, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to listen to this album. It's just a beautiful listen. If you want to get into Katatonia, it's hard because there is no one album. I think the last 3 or 4 albums have been all a bit too samey, and I don't think since the drummer left, the original drummer, he actually wasn't the original drummer, Daniel Lykvist. He left in 2012. Since then, they haven't quite been the same. They started as a pure doom metal band, screamed vocals, went to this, went to an alternative metal, new metal kind of vibe, influences of electronic and trip-hop. They love Mark Kozolek, Red House Painters, one of my favourite singer-songwriters of all time. They haven't been metal for a while, they're more rock, but it doesn't really matter. Absolutely fantastic. There's not many guitar solos in this album, but the tone and the vibe is amazing. Slightly muddy production, but the guitars sound massive. This is just an astonishing album. This is from April 1998, ladies and gentlemen. That's when it was released. Now, the genre says gothic metal. I promise you, sometimes genres can be misleading. I think this is one where it is misleading. This is running in at 47 minutes in length, and it's on the label Avant-Garde Music. And it says here it's only sold 20,000 copies as of 2001. I mean, Jesus. Yeah, it's got great reviews here on AllMusic, 4.5 star. This, I'm sure they've updated it on Wikipedia. You know, sometimes you see classic albums and the reviews are just like, whoa, what the hell? Way underrated, sorry. But this is an interesting one. Some people have this as one of their ultimate favourites. This is my joint favourite Katatonia album with Great Cold Distance, which is the other vinyl I have of theirs. Some people really don't like this, but for me, if you compare this to something like the album that came after it, what's it called? It's one of my least favourites. Still like it, but it's one of my least favourites. Tonight Decision. This is a lot better in my opinion. There are 11 tracks on here altogether. 2 bonus tracks, one called Quiet World, other called Scarlet Heavens, which is, wow, very unique compared to the rest of the tracks. I would say my favourite song is one called Cold Ways. Absolutely amazing, beautiful wailing guitar at the end of it. And I once saw someone on the internet say that Jonas isn't singing on this album, he's lamenting. He's he's almost crying in some of these songs, and you think, oh my god, this sounds ridiculous. It sounds overly dramatic and cheesy and all this. It doesn't come across in the music. One of the most like honest, amazing albums ever. Lyrically, Jonas has always been a little bit out there. I think he's a good lyricist. You don't always necessarily know what the hell he's talking about. Can go off on some tangents. Wow, that is gorgeous. Yeah, one of my favourite albums of all time. If you want to get into Katatonia, I would say Great Cold Distance would be a great starting point. That album doesn't have much aggression in it in regards to the drums. The guitar tone is aggressive, but it doesn't come across as aggressive at all. It's very, very one track and samey, but it doesn't make the album any worse because of that. Whereas something like Great Cold Distance, the production's a lot better. Jonas's vocals are a lot better than they are on that album, because that was released like nearly 10 years later, and it's much more of a metal album, but it's also a bit poppier than Discouraged ones as well. Amazing band, my favourite of all time, to be honest with you. There we have it. Right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're staying in the 90s, my favourite decade for music of all time, and this is seen, this next album, as this particular band's best. For me personally, it's the second best, but this is one that I got for Christmas, first time in about 3 or 4 Christmases, whatever it is. And I put this and my favourite Depeche Mode vinyl on the list, and a couple of other different bands as well. Didn't have a look at the prices, didn't have a clue which one I would get. It's essentially from bloody boxes and boring shit, my only Christmas present, but there we have it. That's what happens when you get old, kiddies. Is none other than Violator, Depeche Mode. This is released in 1990, and I do believe this is now the second closest vinyl to when I was born. The vinyl that's closest to being made when I was born is Stone Roses in my collection. This is now the second closest to when I was born. If we look here, ladies and gentlemen, there is the band, and I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but that is indeed a derriere. But that is a female, and there are no females in the band. Maybe a groupie, maybe just because it's artistic and weird and it's noir, it's black and white. I don't know. Or maybe it's just because Dave Gahan was off his head on coke and heroin at the time. Oh yes, indeed he was. But I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, Depeche Mode, from Some Great Reward to Black Celebration to Music for the Masses, this album and the album after this, which is my favourite, Songs of Faith and Devotion. I think it's one of the best runs in music history. What's the bloke's name who did all the electronics? Holy shit, that guy was amazing. Alan Wilder. He came into the band, I think it was the album before Some Great Reward, and Songs of Faith and Devotion, the album after this. He left the band, and I don't think their music has ever been the same. I do quite like the Playing the Angel album, and their album from last year, Memento Mori, which was basically made after Andy Fletcher unfortunately passed away a year or so before the album was made. That was a great return to form, but a lot of the 21st century Depeche Mode, it just isn't the same. You know, I've spoken about before when I did my Alice in Chains ranked worst to best. It is obviously, needless to say, a good thing that these artists aren't high on hard drugs anymore, because it's just not good regardless of the age that they are. But once they get into the 40s, the 50s, etc., it's going to catch up with them. They shouldn't be doing that, and it's going to kill them. So, of course, needless to say, it's good that they all got clean. But the music did suffer. But like I say, I think it was Alan Wilder leaving the band. I think it is Martin Gower who does most. He's the drummer, I do believe, Depeche Mode. He does most of the lyrics for the band, but I don't exactly know how much Dave Gahan does. He's a great vocalist, very powerful, and at this point in time, let me just have a look at something here. Oh no, Martin Gore is the guitarist and keyboardist. It just shows you sometimes, you know, people will be like, how do you not know that and you're a fan? It's all about the music, ladies and gentlemen. I don't need to know the personal lives of all these artists and follow them on Instagram. The music's amazing. That'll do for me. In fact, Depeche Mode on Facebook these last couple of weeks have been annoying me a little bit, telling me how to do my recycling and whatnot. It's like, what? Oh, don't get me started. Anyway, This album, ladies and gentlemen, it's the band's 7th studio album, 47 minutes in length, on the label called Mute, and it was released March 1990. That'd be October, November, December, January. Yeah, about 6 months later than I was born. I think the Stone Roses album they were speaking of was maybe a month or two before I was born, I think, something like that. But this album sees them starting to kind of embrace the alternative rock of the late 80s, early 90s, and kind of a little bit of a grungy vibe as well, a darker edge, but it's still very melodic and easy to listen to and get into. There's some absolute anthems on this album, some stadium fillers, and yeah, like I said, one of the best runs in music history. The album after this is more of a rock album than anything else they did. I think it's the most brooding and the darkest, and apparently Gahan was, he was close to the edge. Fucking Yes style, ladies and gentlemen, close to the edge after this album. Songs of Faith and Devotion. A lot of people said this is the best. Look, they're both amazing, but for me, this is slightly not as good. But it's hard to say, to be honest. World, in my eyes, absolutely amazing. Personal Jesus, of course, everyone knows, and Enjoy the Silence. Never get bored of hearing those songs. But what I will say is, Waiting for the Night, over 6 minutes. Enjoy the Silence, over 6 minutes. Blue Dress, nearly 6 minutes. Personal Jesus is 5 minutes. Yeah, these are kind of electronic pop rock songs, but they've all got a lot of substance to them. 9 tracks on the album, 47 minutes in length. Absolutely fantastic. Astonishing production. Wilder steals the show for me, but the drums are great. Gahan's great on vocals. The song I'm going to put in the drop down is my favourite. I'm going to put Clean. I just absolutely adore that song, and I think it's very inspirational as well. They should have released that after the 97 album. What was that called? Ultra, because that's apparently when Gahan went clean, but as he made this song, and it is obviously all about drugs within the lyrics of the track, but he wasn't anything but clean at the time. He was lying to us, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, that is the one I'm putting in the drop down as my favourite track. There we have it. And I've got to say, as we get to our 5th and final vinyl here, I'm going to fail keeping this under 30 minutes. I tried, but I just see here that we're running up to 28 minutes, and there is just absolutely no way I'm going to spend less than 2 minutes talking about Blue. It's still in its case, ladies and gentlemen. It's still in its wrapper. Mr. Anthony Fantano, the internet's busiest music nerd, a fellow bald man. He's just done his classics every Christmas. He does a week of classic reviews. You can tell he hates doing it, but he does it anyway, and I, to be honest with you, appreciate it. He reviewed this last week. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Joni Mitchell, Blue, 1971. Let's talk about it. This is her 4th studio album. 36 minutes in length. It says here folk rock, singer-songwriter on the Reprise label. Recorded in California, where motherfuckers die every day over some shit they say. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, this is just an absolutely astonishing album. It is such a shame that her music isn't on Spotify any longer, just like Neil Young. I think it was because of Joe Rogan and his podcast. He had a few opinions that Joni didn't agree with, and she thought that it should take her music off. It just shows you that, these artists are incredible, but they can be a bit dumb at times. Joni, what if I told you that there are tens of thousands of people with opinions that you don't agree with, and they're making podcasts online in a democracy? It's unbelievable, isn't it? Right there at the bottom, if you can believe it, that's the track listing. Very tiny it is, and that is just pure Blue on the back, absolutely blank. There she is on the front, singing a heart out. Amazing vocalist, great lyricist. Her 70s material, absolutely astonishing. I feel that some of her music on the first 3 albums, if you put the best of the songs together, they're all amazing. But there's some throwaway tracks on, Song to a Seagull, Clouds, Ladies of the Canyon. After this, For the Roses is a pretty good album. Court and Spark, one of the better ones. The Hissing of Summer Lawns, I think that's like a jazzy album. Hijira, that's possibly my second favourite. The bass playing on that album is amazing, legendary, as everybody knows. And then after that, she made a lot of albums where she never really got back what made her music in the 70s so great. But, I think she's in her late 70s, early 80s now. I don't think we've got long of Joni left, to be honest with you. But, there's a lot of simplistic lyrics here of, relationships and stuff like that, which you usually get in a singer-songwriter album. It's the song My Old Man, where she's actually singing in a nice way about a man. She's not calling him out, she's not insulting him. This certainly isn't the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen, where she's lamenting the loss, not that he's passed away, but the fact that her man is no longer at home. When he's gone, me and them lonesome blues collide. The bed's too big, the frying pan's too wide. Now, in itself, that's not that impressive, but to come up with that, I just think that's absolutely fantastic. Such a great lyric. There's more incredible lyrics in this album. The one that I'm picking as my favourite, though, is the third track called Little Moon. I think this is the most astonishing, goosebump-inducing song of all time. Look at what it's about online as well, and you'll surely feel the same. Absolutely wonderful, great guitar playing, great production on this. It fits the bill perfectly. The pacing's really good. There's a few lighter, jaunty tracks, a few darker tracks. This is her at her best, in my opinion. Sometimes she can get a little bit too wordy when the musicianship of both her and the people that are playing in her band, if you will, is amazing, but sometimes she can get a bit too wordy perhaps on certain albums, but this is just that perfect balance. It's probably my favourite of hers, but a lot of her 70s material is absolutely stellar, but this is my favourite. It's Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been nearly 33 minutes in length. We didn't keep it quite under 30 minutes, but I'm happy nevertheless. Like I said, don't anticipate another vinyl pickups video. If one comes out in 2024, I'd be surprised. You're probably talking next year now. We add slowly but surely to the vinyls on this channel, but it shouldn't be as long as it has been between the last one and this one, 3 years. I'm looking already. I think I know. I've got ones from the world of progressive rock. I want to get some prog albums, ladies and gentlemen. Geek out on some progressive rock and metal. That is probably what you'll see in the next Vinyl Pickups video. But yeah, next up on the channel, we've got Callisto Protocol. We've got Hotline Miami. Yeah. One is a walkthrough. Callisto will be a walkthrough. Hotline Miami will be a Let's Play. And then the original Resident Evil. It's Chris Redfield this time. I did Jill Valentine playthrough last year. Now it'll be Chris Redfield. But also next week, after the release of this video, I've got a promo of something that's going to be happening on the channel late this year. October, November, December time. I'm not going to give it away, spoilers, but there's a certain video game celebrating its 10th anniversary. And on this channel, we're going to be celebrating it long and hard. It's going to be good. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.